Okay, it's 7 o'clock in Alaska, and this is Free the People. Actually, it's 7:15. We're really late tonight, but we wanted to get together and do a quick study on where you need to go to learn about land patents and what that might mean to you as far as paying your taxes, paying property taxes, and owning your own land. And, you know, we're going to kind of go through where this comes from. And so the very first thing that I would say is to everybody, like we were talking before we started the recording, just really simply get onto Northwest Liberty News, onto the Ron Gibson videos. There's 5 sessions in a class that he just did. And then he talks about in those videos that he has written a book. And actually, while you're going through those videos, he'll refer to page numbers. And the important page numbers on this thing are pages 118 through 126. Those are the pages of the various notices that you're going to need to make up when you bring your land patent forward. So Jim asked a minute ago, what are you going to give an introduction on what is a land patent?
Yeah.
So a land patent is actually, and I don't have a written introduction. In fact, we're going to have to we might have to piece it together as I go through tonight. But what I thought I would do is talk about the supremacy clause in the Constitution. That's Article 6, Section 2. Constitution for the Union States. Jim? Now you know which one that is, right? It's the 1787.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Constitution for
you're talking about the Constitution for the United States of America.
All right.
Hey,
so, well, all right.
Maria,
hold. Here, we're going to go ahead.
May I ask you a quick question? I have never seen a Constitution for the United States of America. Everything I see is all. Is there
right. Okay, look, we're not going to do this right now. I'm going to give the lesson on the land patents, and then we can kibitz later. But this isn't. It's not going to work to interrupt. So just hold off, and I will invite your questions when the time comes. So first of all, think about the supremacy clause. Very often you'll hear the federal government people assert the supremacy clause, but this comes into land patents because land patents are treaties. And so the supremacy clause says that the treaties are the highest law in the land and that those treaties are unassailable by the courts in the country. They don't have any way to get into a treaty. So that's the very first thing that you have to understand about a patent. And a patent is basically a land grant that comes from the United States and goes to an individual, a man or a woman. So there are, you can look in Title 43. And Title 43 is all the information governing public lands. And then also Title 30, United States Code 53, covers laws of in perpetuity. And that's another aspect that enters in here. So the very first thing that I wanted to do is just go through there are 11 different types of land patents. And the one that we're most familiar with is the third type, which is the homestead. And a homestead is a patent or a piece of land that's available for a filing fee. and you have to live on it and occupy it and improve it over 5 years, and then that land will be granted to you. But there are 10 other types, and I want to go through what those are, because as you learn more and more about these different types of land patents, you'll need to understand what part of the land and or mineral estate that we're talking about when it comes to your interest in what you want to claim. So the very first type is a cash entry patent, and it's still a grant, but you pay cash for it. And that was actually the second act of Congress that created that type of patent. The second one is a credit patent, and you take that patent on credit. You don't pay cash for it outright. You have 4 years to pay it. And I just read in the last few minutes, you actually make one payment per year for 4 years. That's a credit patent. The third type is the homestead. You can get it for a filing fee. The fourth type is a military warrant patent, and that is a reward for military service of some kind or another. Then the fifth type is the one that Alaskans are going to be really interested in, and that's the mineral patent. And there are, so that has to do with the mineral estate. And that's, there are three types: the allodial claim patent, and that's like gold. It comes in veins. Then there's a placer patent, and it's minerals that are not in veins. And then a mill site, and that's land you can get for processing your gold and your other valuable minerals, but it has no minerals on it, so it's just a processing site. Okay, so that all comes under the mineral patent. Now, the sixth type is what's interesting to me, the private land claim patent under the domain of a foreign government. Okay, and that'll get a lot of our guys going, because we understand that we're foreign in relation to this government that's operating in the District of Columbia. So that's 6, the private land claim patent. That's when you take land that's under the dominion of a foreign government. The 7th kind is the railroad patent. We're all pretty familiar with that, and that's where the states were granted land on either side of the railway. And then there's a state selection patent. There are swamp patents and town site patents, and there is another town law patent, which is for subdivisions. So those are the 11 types of patents. And like I said, we're generally familiar with the homestead. So when you go to this timeline on thoughtco.com and you look at the pertinent public land patents that are acts of Congress that have created all these patents, you'll see a correlation between the acts of Congress and the 11 types of patents. So I'm going to go through these fairly quickly too, and just I'll get you the link to them so you can study them more in depth as you go over the next few weeks. So 16th of September 1776, the United States created a bounty patent, and that was for people that would sign up to be in the military. And they gave colonels 500 acres, lieutenant colonels 450, and majors 400, captains 300, and it went down from there. So depending on what your commission was, you could get a bounty patent. Then on the 20th of May 1785, that's really important here, because this is the when the states relinquished their Western territorial claims, and they put all the land in those Western territories into a public land trust. And that's really where most of this public land that we're interested in getting is coming out of, or has come out of, in the land patents. Okay? So that was patents northwest of the land northwest of the Ohio. I think that was the Northwest Territories. Or what was that? Northwest Territory Act.
All the lands north and west of Ohio to be brought into the...
Yeah, the Northwest Ordinance. That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, the Northwest Ordinance. The claims were 640 acres, and it was cash entry. So you did have to pay some cash, but they were still considered land grants on the 640 acres.
You still had to pay tax, as you said? You still have to pay tax?
You had to pay a filing fee. You had to pay cash, like cold hard cash.
Oh, cash. Okay.
Yep. And I've got a big question mark there. What does that mean? What kind of cash was it in relationship to the value? But let's keep going through, and it kind of starts to become clear as you go down this list a little bit more. So then the next one on that timeline is the 10th of May, 1800, the Harrison Land Act, and it was 320 acres. These were the credit sales. Like I talked about the credit patent that it was 4 payments, 1 payment a year for 4 years. That was the Harrison Land Act, 10th of May, 1800. Then the 3rd of March, 1801 was they call it the 1801 Act, okay? Now this is the one you're going to want to be interested when you're talking about organic acts and these public land acts. This is the first one where they used preemption or preference for improvements. And so it was the first of many acts of Congress that allowed someone to preempt the ownership by taking possession, occupying it, improving it, and then when it was proven up, it was granted. So again, that was the 1801 Act. Then 3rd of March, 1807 was something called the Intrusion Act. And this one was to discourage squatters. That was also 320, well, it was to discourage squatters, but if you were already squatting on land, you could call yourself a tenant of will and get up to 320 acres as a tenant of will, as a squatter. But they wanted to discourage squatters from that point on. That was 1807, 1813. Preemption. All settlers of Illinois could do it by preemption, and that was the same thing: possess, occupy, improve, and grant, and get the grant. 1820, the Land Act of 1820. It was the 1820 Sale Act. You could have 80 acres minimum for $1.25 an acre. So the minimum amount was 80. But people, at that point, people thought a man needed 640 acres, which I think is a section of land, in order to support himself. So in the 1820s, they were saying you're not going to take less than 80 acres, and that was $1.25 an acre. So it was kind of a reversal in thinking.
And that larger acre.
Maria, where are you going with this? Because I have a question. This is Jim.
Jim, just hold. This is my introduction, and then I'll invite questions. What did you need? What did you want to tell me?
The 640 acres was in the western U.S. where you needed more land because it was more correct.
Okay. Bill was saying 640 acres was in the western United States, or in the western states, he is saying you needed more acres because it was so arid. Okay, so, and this was Illinois. No. I'm going to have to, we'll have to look it up and see what there is in there. 1820 Sale Act, 80 acres minimum, $1.25 an acre. Then 1841 Preemption Act, again, settle and cultivate up to 160 acres. In 1850, Donation Land Claim Act. That's in regards to the Oregon Territory. So that is Oregon, Idaho, Washington, and part of Wyoming today. That was the Donation Land Claim Act. Then there was another Bounty Act in 1855 for U.S. military vets, and the Homestead Act, 1862, 160 acres. You had to be an adult male U.S. citizen and who had never taken up arms against the United States, and that was the original Homestead Act. Okay, so go ahead with your question, Jim, for me.
Everything. My question is this: it sounds like the dates and stuff you're talking about are prior to the Civil War, which meant is that accurate? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Well, no, excuse me, Maria. It's not irrelevant.
All right.
You asked for a question. If you don't know, you can say I don't know. But what I'm saying to you is, if
you know what, I'm gonna do the presentation, and then we can get into the weeds on what's happening. Okay. So that was a pretty comprehensive. And the reason that I was really interested in these acts of Congress is because as we get into bringing forward your land patents are land jurisdiction. They're land jurisdiction letters that are treaties to your land. But you know, the Administrative Procedures Act was passed during Franklin Delano Roosevelt's administration, and when that happened, that's when the real estate warranty deeds started coming in. So rather than being owners of our own land forever and having that be having the language in the land patent that says that this land is yours and it's going to go to your heirs and assigns forever, we got statutory warranty deeds that were 25-year terms, and they're not really true title like the land patent is. They're just color of title. And so what Ron was talking about on his videos, and you'll see this as you watch them, that mortgage foreclosures being used now to take land are, number one, in violation of the intent of the acts of Congress, and those are all the different types of acts that I read to you. They're in violation of treaty law, which is the Supremacy Clause, and that's one we were talking about earlier, and that was Article 6, Section 2 in the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause that says treaty law is the highest law. And then 3, it violates the Forever Clause that is concrete in law. So he says that as we and in fact his experience shows that as we bring forward the original letters patent that were to go from the land trust directly into individual hands, the wording in those land trusts, the lawful wording in those trusts was forever and to your heirs and assigns. So all the land, all the rights, title, and interest in that land, so all of the interest and all of the jurisdiction in that land was to the person that the to the man or woman that the letter patent treaty went to. Okay? And so what that means is forever. Forever means forever. And so it doesn't mean until FDR decides to pass an act of Congress that makes you a tenant in common on the land, and that you'll take something as simple as color of title instead of your actual land ownership. So what is important and exciting about this is that he talks about the land jurisdiction versus commercial jurisdiction, and our entire study, both in our common law group here in Fairbanks and for this Free the People show, the whole focus is leaving the commercial jurisdiction and doing everything that you're going to do in life on the land jurisdiction. So I was really excited as I watched this seminar. You know, Ron went to law school, and he said the real estate warranty deeds, the statutory warranties they're in the commercial jurisdiction, and when you bring forward these letters patent, that's land jurisdiction. So you're redefining your ownership of your land back from the commercial into the land jurisdiction language. You're going back to the original language. All right, and I'll stop there for a few minutes and start taking some comments and questions. But, kind of in the interest of just introducing this topic, I'm not going to spend a bunch of time arguing about the ins and outs because I just don't have enough. I don't have enough information to argue the ins and outs of what impact the Civil War had on this. But go ahead with questions.
Okay. This is Jim. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. The reason I asked you that question, Maria, was that the Congress, if it was the Congress before the Civil War, that was in fact a de jure Congress. At the end of the Civil War, that Congress adjourned, and it never reconvened, never set a date to reconvene, and never has since then. And since that time, we have moved into beyond the Civil War. You're not in the land jurisdiction anymore. It got moved out to the sea. And ownership and whether or not those, you mentioned something about the FDR and the Congress. The FDR and that Congress supposedly is not a de jure Congress. It's a private corporation just like it is today. So, I'm trying to figure out with these land patents you're talking about. You're talking about one era of time where there was a de jure Congress where they could offer these land grants because those was encouragements to get people to go west to populate the area. But the Civil War interceded, and then we had no de jure Congress, and it never reconvened. So we reconvened a Congress, but it was a commercial Congress, and it still is a commercial Congress. And as long as that exists, I'm not sure I can make any sense out of this land patent that you're talking about, because you can't, if you have only a commercial venue now, that's all we have. We don't have the Article 3 courts that do common law. And even in some of because we don't have those, we don't have any place to have a redress of grievance. And in some of your descriptions, and I'm not taking issue and I'm not trying to argue with you, I'm just trying to understand, you use the word statutory, and every time one uses the word statutory, that means that you are in a corporate entity. You're a fiction, okay?
Right.
And yet,
okay. So let me.
I don't see how you can come back from. Say you can come from this where we are today and take land patents, which were only pertinent prior to the Civil War and when we had a de jure Congress.
Okay, now that you may believe that, and that seems like you might. You probably feel like you have. I hear where you're coming from, Jim. We've all studied the sine die, adjourn without time to reconvene. We've seen, we've looked at the 14th Amendment citizenship. We've looked at the different state nationals versus all the way up to a territorial U.S. citizen. Most of the people that you're talking to and addressing on this call are aware of the issues that you're bringing in. However, there were I don't have Ron's book yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to take a break real quick here, and just let everybody know. We're going to meet this week in Fairbanks in a live meeting. We're going to meet Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock at the Denny's in Fairbanks, and I'm going to take up a collection of people that want to order Ron's book so that we can get better into the detail. And I talked to Ron on the phone today, and he gave me an update of his address. He said, throw the two that I had away and use this new address, and that's the one I sent out in the second email tonight. That's the 815 North Central Avenue. So if you want to order his book that covers the acts of Congress and why these are still important to you, use that 815 North Central Avenue address. And if you're not in Fairbanks to take part of the group order, just order it from him directly. And somewhere between a $50 and $100 donation would be great. When I talked to him on the phone today, he said to me, tell your group, he said, keep doing what you're doing. I told him it was a common law study group. He said, whatever you do, just keep doing what you're doing, because that's how we get these changes. Okay? So you've got the address, and you know what to do if you want to order his book. You're going to have the links to his classes. And Jim, look, watch his classes and see if you're not convinced enough, to feel like, you've been given enough hope to grab the book and then go through that book. But because from what this guy says, once you have the patent brought forward properly in your name, your land is unassailable. There's nobody who can attack it. It cannot be attacked. You've got.
Well, he's entitled. He's a thing. Yeah. Okay.
We've got all rights, title, and interest in that piece. Now, something kind of interesting. Darn it. Okay. Never mind. Okay. I forgot what I was going to say. Are there other questions or comments from the floor right now? Please go ahead.
Maria?
Yes, John. Go ahead.
I would like to say this, that, and I would appreciate your response or anyone else's. You mentioned that we are foreign to the federal government. And I understand, I think, where you're coming from, and I think Anna von Reich might suggest the same thing, but I'm not so sure about that. I mean, if we're thinking de jure instead of corporate, because, think about it, we are the progeny of the people who wrote the Constitution, or the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, and so forth, do ordain and establish the Constitution. So, with that preamble done by we, the people, we are the embodiment of the sovereignty of the country. And if the federal government is there, we aren't foreign to it. They are subject to us. I yield.
Okay, so thanks, John. Each and every state, if you think of the European model, think about Europe. You've got Germany and France and Spain and Italy. Those are states in Europe, but those are each independent nation states. So when we left when we left the old country and came to the states of, started settling the colonies and the states of America, it was the same model. It wasn't, it wasn't one nation under God the way they claim it is now. Those are independent, free, sovereign, and independent nation states. So because they're foreign to one another, then you're foreign to the District of Columbia as well. And I think we are foreign to District of Columbia because that's a different, it's a civil law and not common law as the independent nation states were founded. But that's really all, it's all side issues to what we're talking about tonight. Are there any other questions or comments related to what we've covered so far on the land patents?
I'm not so sure that that's unrelated, but I won't belabor the point at this time.
Yeah, no, we're just not really parsing those issues tonight. We can do that another time. But I did remember what I wanted to say about the Civil War entering in. Our land patent for our land in Alaska was a 1955 land patent. There were several reorganization acts that you can read about. If you go to Title 43, Title 43 is all about public land. And if you go down to, if you just start reading about the BLM, right at Title 42, subsection 1. And you'll start to see the reorganization acts that happened. There were 3 reorganization acts in 1940. There was at least one in 1948, I think it was. And then there was another one in 1950. And what that did was it took the General Land Office and moved all of that in under the Secretary of the Interior. And then they created BLM and and other offices. So it's the Secretary of the Interior that signs the letters patent, and he continued signing letters patent long after the Civil War. And in fact, like I said, ours was 1955. And you can see in Title 43 that they appeared to leave the land jurisdiction and at least partially under Administrative Procedures Act, part of the government at least was operating in the jurisdiction, the commercial jurisdiction. But the fact that the letters patent were issued, they had the language that it would be yours forever to your heirs and assign, forever. That was still the language, and that also the reason we went through the acts of Congress, the original one, is because the types of land patents have not changed. They are granted for the same reasons they ever were. Letters patent have never left the fact that they're treaties. They're getting land out of the land trust and granting them to the people of the United States. And I'll tell you, this is our country. That's the entire point of our country. So when we talk about common law and land law, yada, 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 the reason why we go back to those original grants of law, those organic acts, is because we do need to know the original intent of the country so that we can bring that forward and say, hey, no, you wallpapered over this stuff, but we're not having it. We're not buying it. We want to see the original intent, what the country was made to do, and what we're owed, to put it in Anna's words. This is what we are owed. And that's why we look at the history. We're not going to be defrauded of it by this phony civil law stuff that we never intended to implement in this country. So anyway, there's also another important place in the Constitution you need to look, Article 4. This one's the 432. Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2. And that relates to where this forever clause came from. And I want to read it, but I can't find it. Have you got a Constitution?
I don't.
Let me grab. Okay. I will find that 432 in a minute, but when the United States issued letters patent to the people on the states, the land was conveyed into private hands with all rights, title, and interest in that land. The people were given all authority and jurisdiction forever.
Maria?
Hold on just a second.
Really?
Subject to any reservations. Now that's another interesting thing. If you have a land patent, you've got to go back and find out what the reservations on it are. In Alaska, it's basically the entire mineral estate. What?
Depends on which federal or state.
Yeah, the state patents in Alaska are reserved just about everything. Go ahead with your question, John.
Okay, I have Article 4, Section 3, Clause 2 says, the Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or of any particular state. And that is the end of that quote.
Okay, so that's 432, so that gives the original, from the people, the original grant of law that allows Congress to make the needful rules. Then where you go from there are the organic acts.
The fact that they have incorporated things may complicate what I just read, assuming that this was accurate from the original Constitution. But anyway, that's what it says here.
Okay, so...
May I say this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I've read within the last year, I think it was, that we refer to the administrative acts and so forth, but some judge somewhere, and I don't have it on the top of my head, but she has declared that administrative law is no longer law. So that's worth a search, I think.
There was a presidential executive order, and I don't have the number, but it said it made it clear that the administrative law only pertains to employees that are and public servants that are in the executive branch. So it doesn't apply to the people of the state.
Right.
So and the executive order by Trump made that clear. Lots of people who study law understood that and knew that and understood that they weren't that wasn't a jurisdiction that pertained to us. That wasn't law lingo that pertained to any of us.
They sure have been applying it to us in the recent past, though.
They sure have. We perish for a lack of knowledge. The APA changed the laws of in perpetuity, or legally changed the laws of in perpetuity. You can't change law. Law is constant. It's discovered. It's not created by people. But they legally can write new things, and so they change forever to be 25 years. And like I said before, they changed the land patents to statutory warranty deeds. Okay, so now you should have the picture that there were originally from the country there were acts of Congress that were done in order to get the land out to us, and then there were acts of fraudsters that tried to make us believe that we were tenants on our land. And so what this book does is it starts to go through the process. What you're really doing is you're saying, I'm going to go back further than this statutory warranty deed, and I require for myself and for my family to have something that's not color of title, and that's not something legal. I want something lawful because, lawful pertains to the law of the land, and if your land doesn't come under the law of the land, what else possibly could come under the law of the land? It's talking about the land, the land that you're building your homestead on, the land that you're building your house on, the land that you're using. That's what supreme law of the land is around. So you're going to take that land patent, the original patent that came from the United States. Now, during those reorganization acts, the Secretary of Interior gave the job of keeping those land patents at the Bureau of Land Management. So what you want to do is you want to get your statutory warranty deed, a certified copy of your statutory warranty deed that shows your name as the current owner of that land, and you're looking for your meets and bounds description. You get a certified copy of your full chain of title. So everything that happened since the United States granted that land by patent to the original owner up until you took possession of it. So certified copy of the chain of title. You locate the meets and bounds, and then you take that meets and bounds description to the BLM, get 3 certified copies of the land patent affecting that land. Okay? So it could be a 640-acre parcel, but if yours is within that original land grant applies to you. And that's the one you're really going to bring forward. You're going to say, my piece was on that larger piece, so my land comes under that treaty. Basically, that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Of course, the book and the seminars go through many, many more details of what that is.
Maria,
go ahead.
I'd like to introduce a little comment here in that I think the people in Alaska will have an easier tracing of their chain of title than for example, than Ron Gibson had on his own property. Now, he has quite a spread down there in Oregon, but I saw some of his literature on that. That was posted. I think actually it came through Anna's website, or Paul Stramer anyway. And his chain of title showed that there were about 20, I counted them, I might have been 1 or 2 off, but there was 27 different owners over the years. This was coming from about 1862 to whenever he bought it. And I think it was maybe 2011 or something like that. So there's 27 different owners there, and that's the chain of title. But I think in Alaska, most of the people now looking for their chain of title might find, just a guess, but I'd say 5 or 6 steps maybe would be enough. But that was, I yield.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that, I think, is at the land recorder's office. That's where you need to go, to the county land recorder's office. And for us, just the to the recording district.
But the Ron also said that that they have archived the actual patent documents there, but I don't know whether that's accurate or not. But that's what he said somewhere. Whether I heard or read it, I forget now. But I think it was in a short little audio, but it's in a video short. But that was not him talking. It was just, he was talking audibly, but you couldn't see him anyway. He did.
Was that at the BLM or at the land recording district?
He said at the recorder's office. That's the way he worded it.
Okay, and that, and I know that in Fairbanks we got ours from BLM, and it was the actual land patent letter patent, I guess you call it.
Do you have a recorder's office in Fairbanks?
We just have the what?
BLM office, not.
Yeah, we just have the recording districts in Alaska. We don't have, anything like a county recorder. It's just the district.
Well, there's one near Palmer, very close to Palmer, a recorder's office, and I would think there would be one in Fairbanks, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's the recording district, the 4th Judicial District recorder's office, but it's not like county land recording office. It's just a little different up here. But the so a lot of the documents are going to be there. When you read the book and you watch the tapes and you study this, you'll find out that every single piece of paper that you get, you're going to want to have them certified. So certified copies of everything. Basically, you're just showing from the land patent up to your ownership, and you're bringing that land patent forward. And one really interesting thing is if you look at the Alaska Statehood Enabling Act and you go back and find those Alaska, there are 2 organic acts establishing Alaska. When the state, when Alaska got statehood, in that Statehood Enabling Act, all the lands that had been previously claimed by others or granted to others were disclaimed at statehood. So that to me is evidence that the lands that the United States already had patents on were never part of state of Alaska. They didn't claim any ownership in those lands. And so
would you say that again? Who never claimed ownership in those lands?
The state of Alaska.
No.
If you look at the Organic Act, it shows that the territory became an incorporated state. Went from territorial to incorporated state. Although the public law says, the Enabling Act says the state of Alaska is admitted on an equal footing to the original states in all respects whatsoever. It shall always be Republican in form, and the Constitution shall never be in conflict with the Declaration of Independence or the principles of the Constitution, yada, yada, that kind of thing. So, but it was an incorporated, from territory to incorporated state.
I'm thinking, and I could be wrong, but I'm thinking that since the state of Alaska is a corporation, that in order for the state or the Alaska state to exist, it would have to be on equal footing, and it may not be predominant and in existence in that sense, but it's below surface in existence to have the equal footing and to receive any substance such as the minerals and land and so forth. I'm not so sure that the state of Alaska, being a corporation, would be lawfully permitted to accept that. I yield.
Well, corporations can't own land unless they purchase, if they purchase a land patent from somebody who has brought that forward from the original patent.
Well, you know what's happening here in Alaska? The corporation called the Permanent Fund Dividend, that is restricting we, the people, from getting even the dividend, which is weird because we supposedly own the minerals. So we need to confront them on that.
Okay, and you'll also learn from the videos that the mineral estate is there for claiming separately. So if you were to bring forward your land patent, and this might make some sense to people who've been studying common law for a while, but we brought our land patent forward in our capacity as man. So if you look at your statutory warranty deed, it will say your name and it will say whether you're a married person. And so
it won't say your name, it will say the old cap's name.
It will say the upper and lower case name.
Not on a statutory warranty deed.
Are you sure it's only all uppercase?
I'm fairly certain. In fact, I'll probably get one and go ahead and I'll tell you for sure soon.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think ours was upper and lower case, and so.
The statutory warranty implies de facto.
Yeah, but the de facto uses both upper and lower case as well as all uppercase. They use both. And they also use first name, middle initial, and last name at times, depending on, how their own corporate name is styled. But anyway, you're right. It's not your appellation. It's your legal name, and it's your personhood name. It's the derivative from your given name. And that's what's on the statutory warranty deed. So if you think to bring that forward in your capacity, in your given name or your Christian name, in your capacity as man or woman, so that there can be no doubt that you're talking about leaving the commercial jurisdiction and going back into the land jurisdiction. Now, I didn't cover the exact detail of how you do this, but I just wanted for tonight just to kind of give an overview of what you'll be doing when you convert your real estate into a allodial title, into true title. And that's pretty much what I had to talk about tonight, and I welcome questions and comments. And then I think it was a big news day, so there's a few things that we want to talk about that came up today. But let's take a few minutes and talk more about this land patent issue. Go ahead, John.
I'd just like to tell you that on the statutory warranty deed, it is in the all caps name. Interestingly, though, it's signed down below by the people who sold the land. Upper and lower case, of course, it's cursive, but and it's I think it's notary public. Of course, she's signing it cursively also, but how's that for mixing fiction and reality, you know? And I don't know whether you covered this before or not, but sometimes it's difficult to remember where you read something or heard it, but notice on the wording of this, I won't say the name of the people, but the husband and wife of Anchorage, Alaska, for and in consideration of a sum of $1, lawful money of the United States of America, and other good and valuable consideration in hand paid, convey, and warrant to me, the grantee, and so forth. But why do they use $1 in there? And I only heard recently. I wondered myself when they did that, and I think I inquired with the people, and they said, "Oh, that's just the way they do it," you know, and didn't think anything about it. Well, the reason they do that, or have done it, is that the Constitution, I think, the Seventh Amendment, guarantees a right to a trial by jury for anything over $20 or over. So they put that in there. I mean, how fraudulent can you get? Who buys their property for $1? But that's what they've done. And that's why they did it, to keep you from getting a common law grand jury to try them on it. I yield.
AI.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Andrew, Michigan. Destry told me about this call tonight, and I'm very happy I got on late, 39 minutes late, but I wanted to respond to this gentleman's question. Spent a lot of time in the recorder's office, hundreds of hours in the vault in Michigan, and I located my great-great-grandfather who came over here from Germany in 1895, and he made a lot of money buying and selling land, and almost every time they'd buy and sell land, and I saw my great-grandfather's records, and when you're going back to the land patent, you see everybody's records. And many, 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 many times in the old records, you'll see purchase price, $1, and other valuable consideration. I don't think that terminology has anything to do with fraud. I think it has something to do with people being sharp. And when I sell property or buy property, I do it for $1 and other valuable consideration. Do you want the public knowing what you're doing in the public records? I don't.
Well, that's what I thought when I come across it myself. When I thought, well, that was done for confidential purposes, but I don't agree. I don't think so at all. I mean, they wouldn't have to put the amount in there at all if they wanted it to be confidential. They could just say for the appropriate amount paid, and they could say on the payment document or something to that effect. But when they put officially $1, come off of it. That's fraud of the first order, in my opinion.
Well, what makes it not fraud is the phrase "and other valuable consideration," which could have been, maybe you gave them a silver dollar and 50,000 Federal Reserve notes. I don't think it disqualifies you from the bringing suits because it's not $20. It's "and other valuable consideration," whatever that might be. 3 mules and a horse. Whatever. I have a question, and it comes to mind because I'm from the South, and there's a problem going back in the records in the South because, especially in the swath between Atlanta and Savannah, General Sherman burned all the courthouses, and a lot of the records were destroyed during the Civil War and also the War of 1812. So I'm wondering if that's addressed in Ron Gibson's work.
I think that's addressed maybe in Title 43, because even though the patents are in the BLM in the states now, they are originally from the United States. So those those records should still be available from that side of it. So I don't know if they've recreated them and taken them. You'd have to try BLM in that area and find out if they have the letters or whether they go back and recreate them. But I think I saw some language in Title 43 today when I was reading through that said that basically the Secretary of the Interior has to make all of these records available to any court in the United States. So any court of the United States or courts of the several states of the Union was the language in Title 43. And that's really interesting because they're talking still in Title 43 about states, courts of the United States versus courts of the several states of the Union, and making that distinction. That there are land jurisdiction states. The other thing that I wanted to point out, I did point out that they were disclaimed at statehood. I wanted to say thanks for coming, Andrew. Glad you came on the call, and I wondered if you have had any experience bringing any land patents forward to date.
If I had any experience, what?
With land patents.
Yes, I do. I'm very interested in getting Ron Gibson's book. And there's a man named Wayne Hughes in Oklahoma that does land patents for people. He charges $600. But he tells them you got to have some wherewithal when you do this, and I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
We took a railroad parcel, and we went back to the land patent, and, of course, in the 1850s, the railroad came through. And the banker invited me into his office and says, if this railroad's vacated and turned into a rail-to-trail, people are going to be looking in my windows. This goes right by my house. What can we do to solve this so that we don't have to have a rail-to-trail because they're going to vacate the railroad? I says, well, what you do is most likely everybody sold a parcel of their land for $1 and other valuable consideration to the railroad for the right to use and maintain. When they abandon, you get your land back. So tell the people to lien their property with a UCC-1 lien and get their property back. Well, we can't do that. Well, he said we can't do that because it's not been to the Supreme Court. Why hasn't it been to the Supreme Court? Because the Uniform Commercial Code is non-judicial, prejudicial contract. Because it's contract, it will never go to the Supreme Court. Plus, if that cat gets out of the bag, then people will know how to protect their collateral interest on their property. So anyways, what he said we're not going to do and we can't do, we did and had success and did a declaration of land patent. Went all the way back, hundreds of hours in the recorder's office, getting the documents. My brother died. He got shot in Alaska, Fairbanks, Alaska, dead. Now his wife's handling the paperwork, and now we got trouble because, see, she doesn't know what she's doing, and as a result, we have a problem. But let's go back to the first problem. The assessor took that declaration of land patent at face value, stopped sending my brother and his wife their tax bills. Rather than being in Fairbanks, Alaska, calling me back and saying, why aren't we getting a tax bill, they called the government back. They said, oh, yeah, we were all standing around here. We were just talking about you. and the taxes. Well, I didn't get my tax bill. Oh, we'll send that out to you. See, you have to be sharp. You don't want to recontract. Probably be good to do a termination statement, a UCC termination statement. I haven't read Ron's book, but I'd love to. There's somebody else's book too that's a land patent book that I haven't read that I want to get. So I yield.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting. Oh, let me get off of speakerphone here. Sorry, I get an echo when I go on speakerphone sometimes. But Ron mentioned during this seminar that he does, and I'll get the link out to you, but he mentions that it's not included in this book, but it's a one-page document that you do to have your parcel removed from the tax rolls. But yeah, you never want to call them up and ask them where your bill is. That's crazy. But I'm sure, once you have it removed, you're not gonna do that.
Yeah, what you're talking about is very important, and it has to do with, as a matter of fact, it was on the National Assembly call one night. There's a gentleman on there from California that's been in real estate for decades. He said specifically that he could remember, for instance, 1956, they still had private property. And it's this commercial versus private. They ask for your last name. A man doesn't have a last name. They have a family name. So that question pulls you into the commercial, first, middle, last. Same thing with land. Private property, and I can show you right now in the county where I'm at, a couple different parcels that do not exist on the map. They're not on the map. There's no name. There's no numbers. They're not there because they're classified as private, and that's the key. You have to get it private. You can't have ag. You can't have residential. You can't have, business, commercial, private. And they're never going to tell you that. I yield.
And that may be part of that process that he's talking about.
It is. I'm sure of it.
He's converting. There's some kind of a conversion that has to be done once your land patent is brought forward to convert it from,
commercial
public
to private.
Land, from commercial to private, from commercial to land jurisdiction.
Yes.
Is private? I don't think the word private is a land jurisdiction term.
Everything is, if you are in the office of person, the office of individual, the office of human being, the office of human, those are commercial terms in a commercial capacity, in a commercial position. Private references man or woman, which is separate, as I understand it. I yield.
Okay, yeah, and I'm not sure if private is I'm just not sure if private is a land jurisdiction term.
Okay.
It might be a straddling term, and I try to stay away from any kinds of terminology that's just not strictly land jurisdiction because it just creates confusion.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, as we're talking about this, we're talking about public land grants. And to me, when the land was in the trust, it was public. It was for the use of the public. When it was sent out as a patent and a treaty, it became private land. When it was conveyed into the hand of a man, and I don't want to say individual because I know that's a legal term, but a single, conveyed into the hands of a man, did it convert from public to private? So that's just something to think about. The other thing I wanted to do tonight, before we kind of leave this topic and talk about, we're going to leave and talk about the news of the day, and then we're going to be hitting this land patent issue constantly from now on, because what I believe is, you talked about the national call, Andrew, and people wanting to settle their state assemblies. And to me, this is a foundational step for people that want to have a jury of their peers and they want to be operating in the land jurisdiction, in law, rather than at law. It seems like converting you're leaving the commercial jurisdiction, going back into the land jurisdiction is foundational for those assemblies to happen. And that was something that I wanted to talk to Destry about a little bit, because we've talked quite a bit, Destry's talked quite a bit about claiming the land of Alaska, the entire state, and that's kind of a difficult thing to get your head around, but just claiming the land that is yours doesn't seem like it's a difficult concept for people to understand. So anyway, just something to think about as far as the Alaska General Assembly goes.
Maria.
Yes.
What is the size of Ron's book that you're talking about?
I'm not sure. I know that there's at least 126 pages, but yeah, I'm not sure. I don't even think I've seen it.
Did you say 700 pages?
No, I didn't. At least 126 pages.
You say 126 pages. Is that it?
At least. Uh-huh.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
Because he made reference to that. Okay, and I wanted to read, before we leave tonight, I wanted to read the reservations on a state of Alaska patent that I have here. Just to kind of give people an idea of what the restrictions are in Alaska. In Alaska, land is sold with no subsurface mineral rights. The state holds those in common for the people as a collective. And I want to contrast those reservations on the Alaska state land patents with the House Resolution 365, and it's known as the 1866 Mining Law. The minerals were granted to the people, all the minerals, is what's in my notes. So that's the 1866 Mining Law. On this state of Alaska patent, it says these are the reservations, and this is what the grantor hereby expressly saves, accepts, and reserves out of the grant hereby made, unto itself, its lessees, successors, and assigns forever. All oils, gases, coal, ores, minerals, fissionable materials, geothermal resources, and fossils of every name, kind, or description, and which may be in or upon said lands above described, or any part thereof, and the right to explore the same for such oils, gases, coals, ores, minerals, fissionable materials, geothermal resources, and fossils. It's also hereby expressly saves and reserves out of the grant hereby made unto itself, its lessees, successors, and assigns forever the right to enter by itself, its or their agents, attorneys, and servants upon said lands, in any part or parts thereof, at any and all times, for the purpose of opening, developing, drilling, and working mines or wells in these or other lands, and taking out and removing therefrom all such oils, gases, coals, ores, minerals, fissionable materials, geothermal resources, and fossils. And to that end it further expressly reserves out of the grant hereby made unto itself, its lessee, successors, and assigns forever the right by its or their agents, servants, and attorneys at any and all times to erect, construct, maintain, and use all such buildings, machinery, roads, pipelines, power lines, and railroads, sink such shafts, drill such wells, remove such soils, and to remain on said lands or any part thereof for the foregoing purposes, and to occupy as much of said lands as may be necessary or convenient for such purposes, hereby expressly reserving to itself, its lessees, successors, and assigns, as aforesaid, generally all rights and power in, to, and over said land, whether herein expressed or not, reasonably necessary or convenient, to render beneficial and efficient the complete enjoyment of the property and rights hereby expressly reserved. So that is the reservation that State of Alaska makes in all the land grants and all the land patents, or well, maybe I shouldn't say all, but at least in this one. And so it anyway. Go ahead.
Well, you're talking about a corporation making that statement, right?
It says State of Alaska, and it's got the seal that we're used to, not the real seal.
Right. Back east, when they first started doing these things, it was common for the people, when they got a patent on a property, to get the mineral rights as well. And I think this is erroneously put in that way. And once we get our proper position reestablished, we should change that policy, because that's an artificially created corporation that has stipulated that, and they're using it to their advantage. I yield.
Well, I mean, I agree with you, John. This was long past when they changed the laws of in perpetuity and took the forever, our successors, heirs, and assigns forever away and made it 25 years. But they don't have any problem reserving that for themselves and their successors and assigns forever. They don't mind using that language to make the reservations. It just renders the entire situation. It just turns it on its head, and I'm sure that's the purpose.
Yep. May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Andrew, Michigan. You go back to, and Destry knows this, you go back to the old constitutions in Michigan, we've had 5 of them. It specifically says that corporations are limited in duration. And the people that founded America were adamantly, vehemently opposed to corporations. In Virginia, the Anglican Church was trying to get to incorporate. The legislature of Virginia to this day, as a result of that, and that was like 1811, still does not allow a church to incorporate. The founding fathers were vehemently opposed to corporations because they knew, and every state's a corporation, it's total fraud. It's because of the attorneys, the British Accreditation Registry agents. So, yeah, what John's saying is correct. State of is always a corporation. And there's things in Michigan constitutions that prohibit corporations, and they gradually gain steam as, after 1812, after attorneys started to get more involved, and so on and so forth. I yield.
There we go.
What is it your governors can do?
I think it's recording.
How is it that we have come to thinking and believing that anyone has more to say than you?
Dog.
Stand up, sing your song. Let us know the wisdom of your heart, that you belong, that we belong to you, that you belong to us, and that our love is all untrue.
Abby. You gonna say something? You're the star.
Do we dance? Do we take that first step and commit to take a chance? Believe, just relax, 'cause no one ever died of trying to take the music back. Just leave it to them others to excuse. Well, state your heart, be yourself. Oh, help us understand it's you and everybody else. Oh, take a breath and I'll see it through. You know that I am more myself when I'm standing up for you. How is it that we don't see the pain which we exchange for circumstance made easy to believe in, where everybody's loss becomes a gain? Come forth, reach out your hand, be your brother's keeper this one time. Say he belongs, say we belong to him, that he belongs to us, and that our love is all and true.